The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 27th, 2017 edition of, well, it was supposed to be a Benjamin Dixon show, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your, point of view, he has a special plan for tomorrow on the Intercept's Facebook page with a bunch of great guests. So he asked me to fill in, and as nice as I am, I decided to do it. So welcome to the Discourse with Brandon, and joining me as always is a panel of perfectly progressive pundits, right? Whatever, that's good.
Enough alliteration.
Alliteration is always good. Be quiet. I'm getting started. Anyway, so first, but certainly not, I don't know, best is my producer, Richard Green. Say hello, Richard. Don't make promises we can't keep. Next is my Socratic life partner. Say hello, Adair Schmidt, all the way out from Washington State.
I forgot the first button I meant to press was the unmute button for myself, so I just wanted to get back in there, and we'll get on to Adair now. Go ahead, Adair.
No, it's cool. Take all my airtime. Take it all. Just for you. Hi, folks. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and please tell Brandon to stop with the alliteration. Please, for the love of God, it makes me want to strangle him.
No one can stop me. And rounding off the square, our fourth for the evening is. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here, and it's actually nice to be on something where I can talk and not just get talked at.
It's great. You can do it if you want, but you can't. It's cool because that's what Tom.
I mean, isn't that our style?
That's what Tom Perez. I don't curse to be cool. I curse I'm gross. Anyway. So I want to start this discussion off tonight. We have a lot to talk about. It's been a very long week. And it's also been a very long, 96,000 days of the Trump presidency. I think this is the 13th Thursday. So basically our 13th show since Trump has taken over as the president of the United States of America. And so I do want to, touch on what that's been like, kind of, but not really, because Ben is going to talk about, his failed promises, the scandals, et cetera, tomorrow. So I want to frame this conversation about Trump with this question. When did you start believing that Hillary Clinton was going to win? And how did we all, not we all, right? Because I'm speaking for myself, right? So I guess I didn't fully flesh out that question, but the question basically is, how did the media miss Trump? How did we get to this point where Trump becoming elected was such a big surprise? And I think it's an important question to ask right now, on day 97 or so of his presidency, because if we don't reckon with how we were all surprised by it, then it's likely to happen again, again and again. And so I'll answer first, and you can all, jump in when you want. I will freely admit that in the beginning was running, which I guess I'd already known in the back of my head she was going to run. The first thought that came across my head was, she's going to lose. Irrespective of everything else, completely not acontextually, but irrespective of any polling, in my head, I thought she lost to a black man in America whose middle name was Hussein. And to be perfectly fair, at the time, President Obama was unqualified for the job, insofar as you could be qualified for the job. Insofar you could be qualified for the United States, which is a very unique job. We could say that he was the first, he had only been senator for a very short amount of time. He was unqualified. But by the time we had got to November, and I don't know when this shift occurred, I had drunk the Kool-Aid. I was like, oh yeah, this is inevitable. Like, she's going to win. I was kind of pissed that I was being told it was inevitable. But I remember not questioning that she was going to win. And I don't know why. I guess the media I just kept hearing it. I kept hearing it from all of the media sources. Everything I was reading was she was going to win, and the only question seemed to be how much she was going to win by. And so I posed that question to you guys, how did you guys see it coming?
Yes.
Yeah.
God. I mean, how to not see it coming, you had to have been willfully ignorant. I didn't expect her to win the primary, to be quite honest, and I don't think she would have had the primaries been fair and honest and open. They did everything they could to prop her up, and that alone was enough to make me think there's no way she's going to win. But just even when she first announced, I had my qualms with Hillary Clinton because I remembered the super predator comments, because I remembered all the stuff that happened in the 90s when she was first lady. And the fact of the matter is, if you paid attention to politics or you got into politics anytime after the 90s and you talked about the Clintons, she ran that White House. Like, people say Bill was president. No, Bill was too busy with Monica. That was Hillary's White House. Those were Hillary's policies. That was Hillary having Henry Kissinger over at the White House. That was Hillary doing all these reprehensible things. That was her talking with Barry Goldwater and chopping it up like they were old homies. Nah. So, I mean, realistically, a lot of America remembered this, and a lot of millennials, when we started doing our research and when I started reaching out to other millennials, in particular other Black millennials throughout the country, a lot of us were like, nah, we're not going to vote for her. Like, we're not down with this. Not win the presidency as a Democrat if you don't win the Black vote, in particular the Black Southern vote, and there was no way she was getting it. So from the jump, I thought it was doomed. I just didn't know who she was going to lose to.
I just remember, I thought after her testimony, her 11-hour testimony on Benghazi, which I watched the whole thing, I'm like, wow, that's a strong kind of woman that, you know, she's got a thing. And then afterwards, I started looking into her responses and realized she was lying her face off about some of it, and like bold-faced. And so then I started looking at her responses to questions that were hard. Like when Li Fang first confronted her on the rope line and said, "Will you release your transcripts?" And she ignored it. And like she didn't do a press conference at all for the first like 200 and something days. And it was just step after step, she kept making the wrong one. And you know, the one thing that's been consistent throughout every single one of her runs is she's never gone up in the polls. Everywhere she starts, that's always the high point, and then she goes down. And so what I saw her polling against Trump on an individual level, polling against Rubio just disastrously. And I have to say, like throughout the entire thing, I kept saying she's going to lose, she's going to lose, she's going to lose. And then like Brandon towards November, where everyone was saying like the individual state polls were showing that she was ahead in the one key contested states, she was going to win. And so I bought it a little bit, and I'm like, well, maybe she will win. And so I don't want to say I was surprised, but like everything I had said for a long period of time, for like the entire campaign, was she was going to lose. And then for like a week right before the election, I thought, yeah, you know what? She probably is going to win. And it was all because I bought into the polls. Okay. So like you guys are better than I am, because I was basing, I feel like I was in an echo chamber in the media I was consuming. Like, so it was, I saw individual polls occasionally. I saw like, you know, like snippets of data, but largely I was basing my decision off of the consensus narrative that was being built within, you know, not only media like Washington Post and New York Times, but also like what we consider bastions of new media, Daily Kos, Salon, Slate, Daily Beast, you know, everything from basically everything from the Salon to Jezebel to Everyday Feminism was just pushing this narrative. Well, not only was she going to win, but she was going to win decisively. She had to win, and not had to as though it was entitled to her. There was definitely that specter of entitlement, but that there was just no reasonable way anyone could interpret it as though she was going to lose. And I guess what exemplifies this best for me was the article by Jamel Bowie, and I'm picking on Jamel Bowie because I find him to be funny a lot, where he wrote this very long, detailed article about how the race between Hillary and Trump was essentially a horse race, basically like on a horse track, but Trump had already died in the stables, and she was running by herself. And the only way she could lose was if a comet hit the earth.
And in hindsight, that seems hilarious, but it wasn't just Jamel Bowie. A few weeks before the election, The Intercept was putting, and I'm not talking to The Intercept, obviously, friends of the show, love them dearly. But no, a few weeks out, even The Intercept tweeted out something that I responded to a little bit negatively, where they said, this race between Hillary and Trump is largely over. Hillary's won. The only reason it's even getting attention is because the media is pretending like it's still a race. So everyone was essentially had essentially decided the race prior to it being determined by votes.
Oh yeah, and
go ahead.
I'm just saying, to back up your claim about The Intercept, I just today was listening to a podcast where Glenn was talking about the media's treatment of the two candidates being disparate. Like they were very much down on Trump, but at the same time, whenever they were focusing on Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, the person he was speaking to was making the claim that they're using innuendo to create a specter of corruption where there wasn't any. But both of them were coming from the point that, oh yeah, Clinton's got this in the bag. And Glenn kept saying repeatedly, Clinton's more than likely going to win. It will take some sort of catastrophic event for her not to win. So there was pretty much a consensus, like you said.
Yeah. And so, I mean, they're the word for that. Let's learn something with the discourse today. That's called the consensus narrative. That's a sociological thing where it's called the social construction of truth and facts, where basically you hear something enough that it's not fact, it's not proven. It's like there's a lot of room for error in this. And and I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of saying this, but like elections have a big air of randomness to them. They just simply do. A lot of things affect elections that just cannot be determined by polls. And in math, there's just the specter of uncertainty there. But the polling they did itself was in a lot of ways misleading in the way they were determining their variables, specifically basing it on Obama's turnout and a lot of other things. But I don't want to make this conversation about why Clinton lost, because that's a confluence of issues. I really want to make this conversation about, well, how did the media get it so wrong? And there's a really good article in Politico that sort of touches on this. And what it demonstrates is that there is a bubble in media. There is an urban, the article itself talks about the urban bubble, right? That media, both internet media, new media, actually, for lack of a better term. So again, HuffPo, Daily Beast, etc., and old media are concentrated in what is essentially 16 counties in America. And they just happen to be urban coastal cities. And that not only that, but 93% of everyone who works in media identifies as Democrat. And so it's not hard to understand how these meetings, these office spaces, these social circles that are responsible for producing 90% plus of our news became an echo chamber that you could only hear how Clinton was going to win, because everyone who was working there, they only knew people who were voting for Clinton. And that's inherently problematic. It's inherently problematic. Oh, go ahead.
I think it really comes down to this, though. I mean, the fact of the matter is, at least in this country, the media the media creates these narratives. You're right, and a lot of times the media feels they have the ability to shape elections in any which way they want. And so there's this idea that if you're a Democrat and you watch only Democratic news, well then, or you're someone who only watches like MSNBC, quote unquote left leaning, you only look still to the right. If you watch this quote unquote left leaning news, you're going to vote Democrat. Like that's just what they're told. And if you're told, well, if you watch Fox News, then it's this. So there's this tendency for a lot of people to just shove everything onto the media. But I think the media really kind of misconstrues their own power. The media thinks they have the ability to shape the election because the people that watch those channels do tend to follow along those lines. And so the media got kind of full of itself, to be quite honest with you. And you're right, they're located in quote unquote liberal coastal cities.
I want to push back on you right there. I want to push because I don't think and so I agree with you halfway. But what I think is more likely the situation going on is that they think they're reporting the news. They think they have some kind of, they have their finger on the pulse of America. But they, like you said, they don't understand that they're making the news. They're constructing reality.
I think they do too. And I'll use Matt Taibbi's interview from Chapo, where he starts it off saying, like, one of the big things that they missed was they always felt like in previous elections, especially using the Howard Dean Scream example, the media is the kingmaker. And whenever there's a guffaw, whenever there's some sort of thing, they all step in and they craft the narrative. And it's like 3 weeks of this candidate doing this horrible thing, and then the candidate apologizes, then they quietly slip into the background, and it's the media that does that. And Trump just never did. No matter what screw up he had, he never apologized. He's just like, yeah, congrats to you. You got nothing. I don't care what you say about me. My people don't care what you say about me. How many times did you see like real live fact checking in a chyron of Trump lying? You know, like Trump is saying something live, and then underneath it says this is not true. And that didn't matter. It didn't matter to Trump. It didn't matter to his voters.
Well, I think there's one thing I think that's really important that I think we should touch on quickly, if you give me a moment, is that there was already this idea that Hillary was going to win before the election even started. You know, before anybody names was announced, before anybody even declared that they were running, people kind of already presumed, well, Republicans are ridiculous, racist jerks. There's no way they're going to win a national election as long as they keep approaching things from that perspective. And, you know, all we need is a decent Democrat that'll be able to go in there and just point out how ridiculously bad Republicans and their policy are, and they'll walk away with it, win by 10, 20 points. And Trump versus Hillary fit that pre-existing narrative particularly within the Democratic strongholds so well that people easily glommed onto the idea. It's like, oh yeah, sure, Hillary wins this, Trump loses by a landslide because America's not racist, right? I mean, you know, it's kind of racist, but it's not really that racist. I mean, definitely not the liberals, and definitely not white women. They're not racist or, you know, or economically motivated enough, or whatever the however you want to attribute people for voting for Trump, but that whatever it is, they don't see things similarly enough to Trump that he could ever possibly win, and then we ended up with Hillary losing the white women vote.
Well,
here's real quick, because I want to go back and I want to hit back on a point that you argued with me. And here's the thing: the media does know that they're creating this narrative, and I've seen it from the inside because they look for the people that fit their narrative. And not only do they do that, so again in Philadelphia, there was cameras and news folks and reporters everywhere, but they refused to talk to you unless you fit this very particular narrative that they wanted to have. And that was Hillary people are great, they're diverse, and everyone loves her. And Bernie people are white males, that millennials in their early 20s who are sexist assholes. And that's what they tried to put on TV, and that's what they did put on TV. When I was there and I was talking to a lot of these media folks and trying to get interviews as a person in the media myself, and going around and talking to folks and saying, hey, here's this info that we're seeing, here's this info that we're doing. Even the media tent coverage was abysmal. The framing of it was whiny Bernie people. Yeah. That's what they did the entirety of the election. So they framed it the way they wanted to. They made the news. And you see this even further in the collusion between reporters and the Clinton campaign, saying, I will write a fluff piece for Hillary Clinton. They know what they're doing, and to say that they're not is disingenuous at best.
So I don't think to back up his claim about the DNC, you go outside and you look at what they were covering in the protest, and there were cameras all over the flower people who were sitting in front of the fences, and none talking to the BLM marchers or any of the other people who are organized who are outside talking. And they were close-ups on these people, making the protesters look ridiculous, when in fact most of them were there who were hardworking people who were concerned about what was going on inside, when delegates were not being allowed to walk outside the fence, and were very vocal about it. And
don't get me wrong.
We were crowd. There was police presence. There was Secret Service. There was this incredible collusion of the Clinton campaign, the media, and then even law enforcement at times to get the narrative that they wanted. You didn't hear about a lot of things going on in FDR Park on places like CNN. A lot of the stuff I was streaming from the floor for Project Sanity and Progressive Army, people watching those streams were commenting, this isn't on TV. The media reality was that the arena was packed, everyone loved Hillary, and it was all kumbaya, hugs, and kisses.
I remember the reports of the noise machines and like various other things to detract from the dismay that was going on there. Go ahead.
So I guess maybe I framed that wrong. I don't necessarily think that they're not doing it on purpose, because as you have all pointed out, there are definitely instances where the media was purposefully burying their head in the sand. And so not only the instances you gave, but we've in the aftermath from listening to people like Josh Fox, listening to people like Susan Sarandon, listening to like a myriad of Bernie surrogate supporters, we know that they were basically blackballed, blacklisted, banned from certain platforms, MSNBC being, and all with Chris Hayes being one of them. And so, like, there's definitely this era of, well, we're just not going to listen to these people. But I think a lot of it is facilitated by the fact that there is is facilitated by the demographics of not only the liberal media, and I call it the liberal media not necessarily because media industry is liberal, because it's obviously very pro-corporate, but because of the fact that, like, the rank and file of media organizations are made up of liberals. Like, they're made up of of elite liberals. And so in criticizing how the media missed this, right? They view Trump as a circus sideshow, because he didn't appeal to anyone in their social circle. And not only anyone who was working with them, but anyone who they knew in their personal lives. But that just means they're out of touch. And in saying that the liberal media, again, the demographics of the media are liberal, not necessarily their goals, is out of touch, is a direct condemnation of the Democratic Party, because they go hand in hand. Like, as we saw with the various leaks, there is an incestuous nature between liberals in the media and the Democratic Party that only serves to facilitate that insular groupthink, right? The fact that they could not see it coming because they didn't bother to ask anyone. But when I will say this, as we transition to talking about how this, that implicates Democrats and Democratic Party being out of touch, which again they are. This, like, what makes it very easy for Democratic Party to be out of touch, and what makes it very easy, I would say, for liberal media to be out of touch as well, and is that they represent a horizontal slice of society, right? It's like they are better able to project the illusion of diversity in their party and in their workspaces. And you see this with pictures, coming out of HuffPo editorial staff, pictures coming out of any of these places where they're not monochromatic in the same way you would say. I don't know, Trump's cabinet is monochromatic or monogender, but they are in fact, monoclass. They represent one specific class of society, one specific ideological subsect of society, but because of the fact that they have, we have a bunch of Black people, we have a bunch of women, we elevate LGBTQ people. They're able to project this air of, well, we're actually very diverse. And we represent everybody. Like, we're having these diverse conversations, if that makes sense. The liberal media is able to be, by nature of being like a rainbow of colors and creeds and genders and religions, are able to very easily convince themselves that they're having a complete conversation. But what never seems to get brought up is, I don't know, class really, but also just like the people who are left, the identities that are left out of this conversation that they're having.
That's, again, it goes to shaping what the narrative is. And if you watch the news and you get your news solely from sources like MSNBC, and again, we're just going to keep it with the liberal side, what you see is what you tend to believe life is representative of, because that's the narrative that they paint. And I mean, Dems in touch, because that's kind of the whole game plan, right? Like, if you look at the Democratic game plan and you look at the liberal media game plan, it's kind of the same thing. It's this idea of that wide tent, because that wide tent is what makes them money. That ability to quote unquote attract everybody is how they make the most funds.
Yes.
And that's simply what it is. And then in the media, you can play off ratings, you can play off and use the hatred of Fox News, or the fact that they're basically just a bunch of, salacious jerks, to draw more viewers, because then you can paint yourself, also see me, look at, I'm the nice centrist. And that's what the Democratic Party does. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, all that either of them care about is money. And we're just pawns in that game to make the most money in a short amount of time as possible. So it doesn't really, we have to look at it. They're dissing, they don't come from the jump. It's all about money.
And they all make a lot.
Just real quick though, I do want to lay down some quick numbers real quick. Again, bad sentence, whatever. So recent polling has shown that more people think that the Democratic Party is out of touch with the rest of America than either Trump or the Republican Party. This polling that this reflects earlier polling that also demonstrated that the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton have, largely interchangeable at this point. Like, right? Come on.
They are literally the same
They're literally the same thing. Yeah, same thing. They're the same thing. And so are viewed more unfavorably than either Trump or the Republicans. And so, like, my only point, what I said earlier, was this: that the Democratic Party, by nature of, like, as the party of diversity, is much better able to shut out contradicting voices because they believe that they're representing everybody. But I know John wanted to get in here.
No, I think that, at this point, I think that the Democratic Party is the producers. If you look at the fundraising that they've done in the first quarter of this year, they've tripled their donations from corporations from what they did all of last year. So they don't, I agree with Adair. They're just in it to make money. And whatever messaging will get them money is what they're going to go with. And right now, for them, that means not taking a stand on anything. They're going to lead with their values. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are their values? Everyone should have an opportunity. Okay, great. How? You can watch. You never see that on MSNBC or CNN or anywhere else. You see their platitudes being given and glossed over. But if you go to left media or online media or new media, anyone who's questioning about this ends up getting their butt handed to them, their ass handed to them by anyone who's questioning. And they don't want that. The media stays away from those hard questions. And they crafted this demographic shift in America is going to be the thing that saves the Democratic Party, which was predicted 30 years ago and still hasn't come true because, let's face it, America is racist as shit. And that demographic shift is being used as a scare.
Yeah, so exactly. So also, like, people aren't voting though. So demographics can't help you if no one's voting. So people go out there and they quote that Hillary Clinton won more votes than President Obama, but she also won a smaller percentage of the voting populace.
Right. And look at who she voted. Look at who she ran against, and look at who
John makes a good point. So let's break this down. Let's break down a little bit, like, why Democratic Party is probably less popular than the Republican Party or Donald Trump. And I would say it's for two reasons. One is with John laid out very eloquently, is that they have no proactive message. If you ask people what the Democratic Party stands for, and this is why Clinton and the Democratic Party are essentially one and one. She's essentially the avatar Democratic Party. Like, if you asked people why she was running, I still can't tell you, like, in a way that's not condescending and go like, well, because it was her turn. It's like, and if you ask people, well, what does the Democratic Party stand for? What exactly do they stand for? And the answer becomes, we talk about this all the time. Like we talk about all the time, it's, well, they're not Republican Party, and for when it comes to defining yourself in the political sphere, telling people that you're not something else, along with being vague, is incredibly, like, demotivating. Like, it's not a good motivational thing. Like, it simply doesn't work. And so, like, it's hard to view a party favorably when you can't, condense their ideology or their platform or whatever position they have into a small, easily digestible package. Like, I know what the Republicans stand for. Like, the Republicans are very open, and, well, not very open, but the Republicans are very vocal in their proactive message. Their message is horrible, but they're vocal with it. The Democratic Party doesn't really have a message. At the same time, the second reason why they're probably less popular is because they've essentially abandoned their base to run for the center. They've essentially, but one second, and this is where it becomes even more complicated, because the Democratic Party is not the opposite of the Republican Party, because then they might have a chance. As the Democratic Party embraced the left base as strongly as the Republican Party embraces and played lip service to the right, the base of the right, the alt-right, the Nazis, the white supremacists, like, then they might be viewed more popularly, for better or worse. But they run away from their base and run towards this mythical center, which doesn't really appeal to anybody, because there is no mythical center.
Yeah, well, that essentially is Clintonism. I mean, Clinton's created that triangulation. Yeah, so that's like them.
Here's the thing, and I want to get at something that I've been saying that's really been annoying me, especially with a lot of these Democratic folks out here who feel that They get on Facebook and they do things like they change their Facebook profile picture to a resistor. And they're like, I'm a resistor. I do this. Here's the thing, folks. Resistors serve a purpose in a system. Serves a purpose. It does an actual function. Your idea of I'm just going to say no because I don't like Donald Trump is not resisting. There is an unwillingness by Democratic affiliated people to sit down and critically think about what their own ideologies are, because if they do, they have to either come to one of two conclusions: that A, the Democratic Party is not for them, and because they are typically, you are in this country, are very, very often culturally, whatever your political ideology is, not many of us actually take the time to sit down and coherently think out, what is my ideology? We take it on what we were raised with. That is our culture. That is a part of who we are. It is passed down. So if they sat there and they actually took a minute to think about it, they would realize the Democratic Party is incredibly conservative. This idea of the mythical center not existing is very factual, because they're not running towards the center. They're not running towards even a mythological center. They're running towards the right. They're actively and very hard campaigning to take Republicans. They're actively campaigning as if they want to be the conservative party, which they are. You cannot have a left party in the United States when that party is full of capitalists. Capitalism is the problem. So if you sit down as an American voter and you think about what my values are, where I lie, what I believe, the only logical conclusion that you can come to is that you are neither a Democrat or a Republican, and then that leaves you kind of left breathless and up in the air, like, oh my God, what do I do now? But this idea of being culturally a Democrat, this idea that you have to be one or the other, this idea that you must be, or part of the race is that if you're not a Democrat, you're a racist. If you're not a Democrat, you're for all these rich people, is patently false and something that needs to be broken down. But America has such a bad case of cognitive dissonance, it will not happen without a dramatic shift in demographics from a younger generation of color, actually, that has taken the time to sit down and just actually identify their own beliefs, come up with their own system, and critically thought about why they believe what they do, and whether or not they're Democrat because they believe in it, or they're Democrat because they were told they're one.
To be fair, liberalism has always been a very vague ideology. It's like, not, if you're not talking about like sort of classical liberalism, like liberalism as like a modern phenomenon it's a very vague ideology. Even neoliberalism really is as well. I mean, you can point to certain aspects of it. I mean, liberals. So, like, one difference between liberals and neoliberals, and there is a few, right? Are that no one self-identifies as neoliberal. Like no one goes out and says like I'm a neoliberal.
I want to quickly touch on what Adair was saying and just say I think that part of the gambit of what the Democrats are doing essentially is that they think that they could be the corporate party, and that essentially the parts of the Republican Party that are splintering off from their control, the Donald Trump faction, the anti-trade, the isolationists, that section, that by exploiting the gaps between them and the Republican Party, that they can drag Democrats into accepting the Democrats being the corporate party along with being the social justice party. So social justice mixed with corporations is essentially where they want to take, and social justice sans any sort of economic justice, which obviously is going to be lacking. But go ahead.
Yep. Like the part of this conversation has to include President Obama's 400K speech, right? Because that is indicative of the Democrats and the Democratic establishment and Democratic rank and file, who I'm going to also include the media we were talking about before, because in a lot of ways, the media is also as a very self-selecting industry by nature of the realities of how writing for exposure works, writing, unpaid work, all of those things kind of self-select for people out who actually basically need money. So in a lot of ways, it does tend to self-select for the richer of society, or rather the more well-to-do. But we have to talk about the fact that President Obama is actually, scheduled to give a $400,000 speech for 90 minutes. I want to say it's that, don't sigh, you know what's happening. Don't think you can't believe it.
The 90 minutes thing is good to me. Is like, I thought it was only going to be an hour, but go ahead.
But the thing is not only is he giving a speech, he's giving a speech to a company that has received lenient settlements from the Department of Justice.
That's problematic.
I mean, it's not only President Obama, right? So Eric Holder, the head of the DOJ under Obama for a while, after his tenure was up, he went right back to his law firm, which does lobbying work.
again,
And you contrast that with, these are the same Democrats that said, I know we should probably raise the minimum wage a little bit, but $10, $15. I think $15 is just too much for that, working mom that's busting her ass. I probably deserve about $400,000 for about an hour and a half. That sounds about right.
The minimum wage is
let alone universal basic income
that it becomes politicized for some reason when if you really believe in economics, like not necessarily the specter of conservative economics, but like demand side economics, progressive economics that have been demonstrated to work. Like, you put more money into the people's hands who will spend it the most, money multiplier effect, a lot of stuff. Like, it just makes sense. The only time raising the minimum wage doesn't make sense, the only time single payer healthcare doesn't make sense is when you're a neoliberal ideologue. Yeah, that's when you have to balance that. When you have to balance the actual material benefits of doing that with the ideological cost of doing it. When you have to say, well, if I do this, if I raise the minimum wage, it's going to go against what I view to be moral about society and ethical about our world. And then so far that, hey, neoliberalism, capitalism demands that certain people be poor. Like, it requires that certain people have less. But what I was going to say was that people have come out of the woodwork to either defend President Obama or act as though this is the last straw before they realize that he is he's never demonstrated himself to have any kind of lack of affinity for Wall Street. I don't understand how people can be surprised by this.
Well, for the first 6 months or so of his campaign, he campaigned very differently than how he ended up governing. But once he became president, yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like, when I say you shouldn't be surprised by this doesn't mean it's not problematic to me, right? Mm-hmm. So just because something is common amongst, politicians or just in society does not mean it should be normalized. Like, I don't care. I don't care how long we've been bombing Afghanistan. I will never normalize that.
Yeah, we also have to keep in mind it's like Trump is literally selling access to himself in Florida as president.
Don't you right out in selling access to himself? When you say selling access to himself, you should really clarify what that means.
You talk all the time, Brandon. Shut up. I want to touch on what Richard just said.
Selling access to himself
because what Donald Trump is doing is problematic and likely, and frankly, illegal. We cannot let that distract from what Obama doing is problematic. And again, I'm with Richard. I really don't know how in the hell you could not have seen this coming. I mean, realistically. But we can't conflate one illegal act with the neoliberal act and let the illegal act distract us from the neoliberal. Well, the fact of the matter is, what's going on is the revolving door of neoliberalism. And if you were surprised by this,
I just mean America voted for somebody that they knew was going to do this. Like, they knew that Donald Trump was going to sell the presidency for personal gain. And I'm not. It might be illegal, but I'm not sure America disagrees with it in concept as a country.
Here's what I would say, right? So, I agree with someone said before. I can't remember which one of you said this, but you were right, and I apologize for forgetting which of the three of you said this. But there is this tendency when you're dealing with lesser of two evils politics to, as a way to assuage your own guilt. It takes a strong person to actually internalize and not just wish it away that I am supporting evil. And so there actually becomes this tendency to say, okay, well, hey, what we have to dispute is the tendency in some people to make the less evil option the good option. That's not the same thing. No, but that's what we see. We see people waxing nostalgically for Trump, for Obama, for Clinton. For George
even liberals
Bush,
pining for George Bush.
For Bill Clinton. Yeah, liberals pining for George Bush. Nancy Pelosi was pining for George Bush a few days ago. And again, spoiler alert, no matter what you believe, if you think that President Trump has been worse than George W. Bush, you're wrong. Like, you're unequivocally wrong.
George W. Bush is a neoliberal racist. Trump is an out-and-out racist, and I think that bothers white people.
No, so here's what I was going to say.
I think that's what it is white people are uncomfortable with out-and-out racist, but if you do it in a way that they don't have to see it, or they can find some way to rationalize it, like Katrina. Bush doesn't like black people, but if you're white America, you can conceptualize that and find a way to make it okay. Donald Trump saying they can't do that.
I'm going to dispute you this time because you know how much I love calling honkies out for being honkies. But with this, it's not even just being white. This is like a part of the liberal theology. They like politeness. And we've seen this a lot. Like, they like politeness. Say what you want about, George W. Bush. He was goofy. He was a little weird, but like, he was polite. And like what they don't like about Trump is not the fact that he's probably guilty of multiple sexual assaults. They don't like the fact that it's not the fact that he's probably racist. They don't like the fact that they don't care about the fact that he probably made a large amount of money doing shady business dealings. What they don't like is his rhetoric. They don't like how clumsy and misogynist and racist his rhetoric is. They don't care what the implications of his policies are so much. But that's a different story.
Trump's like a magician doing a magic trick. Like, you teach him a magic trick and he does it poorly so everybody can figure out how it's done, so he ruins it for everybody. That's what Trump's doing. He's ruining the magic trick for everyone of profiting off of all of this by doing it so sloppily.
He's revealing. Yeah, but that's the problem, right? Because instead, what Democrats should be doing right now is they should be pointing to Trump and saying, you know what, Republicans, you need to wear this. Yeah, Republicans, you have to wear Trump, because Trump is what you've been working towards for the past 30 years, starting with Reagan. And
that requires coherent thought on their part.
And progressives should be saying, Democrats, you have to wear this. This is what you've been working for. This is what Bill Clinton triangulating and sanctifying selfishness in the markets and deregulating Wall Street. This is what you were working towards too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but
I think that's what we do, though. I mean,
let John in there, Dare. Let John in there, Dare.
So that actually was something that the states were fighting against Hillary Clinton, and even the DNC was fighting against the Hillary Clinton campaign to do during the run-up to the election. They said, let's make the Republicans own this so that down ballot we win. So every Republican has to stand up on stage and say, I endorse everything that Trump says, or say and actually come out in opposition to the guy that they put at the head of their ticket, and then say it's problematic that we put this guy at the head of the ticket. But Clinton didn't want to do that. The neoliberals and the liberalism of the Clinton wing of the party said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to try and get those voters. And just like Adair said earlier, they ran to the right to try and get those voters in order to try and win. And it obviously was a losing battle. It was a losing strategy.
Yeah,
and that's what they do all the time. Like you were saying about the Clintons in general.
Like, you can't frame yourself as the less Republicans, because people will always choose people with the more Republican option. Like, they tried to win the center. What I was going to say was this, though. I forgot. Like, talking about Obama's speeches and how they demonstrate the Democratic Party, at least in the media, and also the Democratic Party, the rank and file, the elite Democratic are out of touch, is because it seems like there's two groups of people who I noticed were coming out of the woodwork for this. There were that group of Vox writers who basically, for lack of a better term, as a gaggle of people who were like, this is Obama, like, this is for everything that we thought he was. Like, what are you talking about? This is all Obama has ever been about. Like, this $400,000 speech, this shilling for Wall Street, this is all Obama's ever been about. Like that, like, that's just it. Like, he's always been this way, and if you haven't noticed it, you just weren't paying attention. I'm sorry.
I'm actually going to push back on that. I don't think people weren't paying attention to Obama. I think people didn't care. I made this comparison in the green room, and I'll make it on air even. We were talking about the difference between Donald Trump and President Obama, at least as it pertains to economic but foreign policy. It is I have Newports. Obama's Newport. That's what that is all, man. He's cool. He's this. He's great. And he's black, and that was the one great thing that he could do. So no matter what he did, people wouldn't pay attention to it, because then they could point to that and say, well, guess what? I'm not a racist. I vote for black. Convenient scapegoats for everyday vote. I'm going to be honest. I think people were dumb. I think the media was stupid. If you sat up here and you're in the media, your job is, and you're going to sit up here and tell me you're surprised now, hang it up. You're not doing your job. You're done. Go back. Go home.
I know part of it was I wanted to be proud of the first black president. So like I tried to turn a blind eye to a lot of things. I wanted to be proud of the first black president. I wanted to be able to look with pride and do all those things. And it was hurtful and hard to get there to the point where it's like, no, he is just as bad, if not worse, because of what he's hiding by nature of using race and what you pointed out to what the excuses he was giving America, the leeway he was giving them by being there. It was unfortunate overall, but that's where I was. Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, we know the media doesn't do their job because honestly, they're incapable of doing their job. And the reason they're incapable of doing their job is because they've been so corrupted by just the two subcategories, but because they've been so corrupted by private interests that it becomes impossible to critique power. B, the demographics of the media are so homogenous that they are incapable of criticizing neoliberal politics or liberalism, which enables neoliberal politics, because that's just who they are and that's their social circle, and they're just glad to be there, honestly. And so when it comes to the C of this, the problem with the media, and the problem with, and it's also indicative of the critiques we've been seeing, is that out of the woodwork have come these people, both, and I'd say the Negro liberals, like the people, like the black liberals who act.
It's an interesting time to freeze, or is that me?
Right?
No, that's
yeah, he's frozen.
I kind of want to just leave him on screen.
What was the liberal Negroes?
Yeah, well, I know what he's talking about, and I've been seeing
the black community.
I've been seeing more of this as far as he's back. We're back.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. That was weird. Like, the people who are coming out strongly in favor, or rather, let me put it this way: a lot of people who are coming out strongly in favor of President Obama taking this money are either the black liberals who, by nature of being elite blacks in society, these same people who I said allow Democratic Party to give the illusion of diversity within their party, they've come out and they've defended this on the basis of blackness, and they have been allowed to act as the gatekeepers for racism, what constitutes racism, what constitutes black empowerment, wokeness, for too long, right? And so they have turned this conversation about, well, hey, isn't it kind of messed up that the person who was basically in charge of policing these groups of people is now actively being paid by them less than a year out of office, and he doesn't need the money? They've turned that into a conversation about, like, well, if you don't trust President Obama, if you don't want him to make money, you're basically racist. And this kind of neoliberal identity politics is, like a lot, both of you have said prior to me getting disconnected. What is another of the reasons why people were simply not paying attention to President Obama, and still want to give him carte blanche.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's so interesting to see what people think of Obama, because he doesn't represent. He's not a person anymore. He represents this ideal, right? He represents this ideal to a lot of these neoliberals. A lot of them who don't even realize that they're actually neoliberals, and when they sat down and thought about it, they would. But that's a whole other conversation. He represents, how everything should be. He got everybody health insurance. He bombed brown people, but it's okay because he's black. He did all of the things that he essentially continued Bush's policies, but he put a person of color, the face of a person of color, doing it. And that's all they ever wanted. And so now that he's going out and he's doing these things, and no, he doesn't need the money.
He's the perfect.
Well off.
He's the perfect
$200,000 for life. He's exactly what they want. He's literally their wet dream. And so for them, they have to find, again, it's that cognitive dissonance at play. They have to find ways to rationalize this behavior, to understand it, because they hate it in Republicans.
Well, yeah,
it sans everything else. It's like, he gets $200,000 a year just as a pension, $200,000 plus a year just in pension.
Yep.
Like, so the idea that you can't make it on $200,000 a year, but then that same party's going to tell me that we don't need to give you an increase in minimum wage, or to cover your basic living expenses. We don't need a living wage. That I think is one of the reasons why the Democratic Party is so unpopular. You can't have both of those. You can't be telling me that Barack Obama's struggling on $200,000 a year plus a $60 million book deal, but this single mom isn't struggling for only $7.50 an hour instead of $15. That doesn't make any damn sense. I won't put up with that shit.
Again, I have to say, like, the black people who exist at the minorities and oppressed people who exist at the highest of the Democratic Party are simply there to give the illusion of diversity. That's it. They are there so that they can be used to erase the existence of people of color on the left, to the left of the Democratic Party, right? So the Democratic Party has been allowed to position themselves as the gatekeepers of liberalism, for one. I mean, liberalism, and I mean, sorry. Rephrase that. The Democratic Party has been allowed to position themselves as liberals, as being the gatekeepers of what is acceptably on the left, and part of that includes being gatekeepers of racism, misogyny, sexism, transphobia, homophobia. They get to decide what constitutes those things, because basically they own all of our identities. At least politically and socially, the Democratic Party. This is one of the things that we have to understand and combat. Because one of the biggest travesties of the not biggest travesty, one of the biggest, one of the most fucked up things that occurred during the Democratic primaries was the systematic erasure of people of color, women, and any kind of minorities from the Bernie Sanders supporters, just specifically in the left generally. That the Democratic Party was able to position everyone who wasn't supporting Clinton, regardless of whether you're supporting Bernie or not, as white males, as the Bernie bros. They systematically erased everyone's identities because that's just what they're allowed to do. Because as the spoils of the culture wars, and as again, not being Republicans, they're allowed to say, well, hey, you know what? Again, also because their demographics are multi-ethnic and multiracial and multi-gender, they're allowed to say, well, hey, you know what? We get to decide. Anyone who opposes us are opposing these things. And I'm telling you, fam, it's like that makes them very dangerous.
Yes.
I mean,
because they're able to. Let me finish. I'm gonna finish this real quick, and I'll let you go. Because they're able to position any kind of movement for economic equity as a white vanity project. They're able to make any kind of movement for a more intersectional social progress. So basically I'm trying to say movements that recognize that in order to remove racism, we have to also attack it from the class, from the angle of class. They're able to erase that from the metric and present any critique of the Democratic Party, any critique of capitalist system as a white vanity project, as the preoccupation or the albatross. That's a good word for it. The albatross of the white male, the rich white male. And that, and again, this also comes down to the fact that they've identified themselves as the party of the workers. It's so the only people who are against them by nature of them co-opting the identities of all these groups are the white males. And honestly, the white males are the people I feel for them. I feel for the white male working class because they have become the straw man scapegoat of the Democratic Party establishment. They have come out, and I know they're staring daggers at me because I'm
actually not paying attention to you very much, to be quite honest.
Okay, fine.
He's watching the draft.
But this is important.
Working class male who spent my adult life working with union guys in the white working class, they're not Democrats. But the majority of the white working class at least in the industry that I worked in, are Republicans.
But this is the purpose. The point. This is the large point of the point. I'm sorry. This is what the point I was making. The point I was making was this. We have to dispute the idea that the Democratic Party and the elite blacks in there, the elite women in there, the elite LGBTQ people in there are able to speak for the entirety of those identities, because that's one of the biggest hurdles. That's their only weapon. That's one of the Democratic Party's only weapons, because all their other policies are so completely unattractive to the vast majority of people that their only weapon, they've weaponized the oppressed people's identities, and they position their opposition, whether it be Republicans on the right, alt-right people, or even the far left, as everyone who's not Democrat is just a white male. They've homogenized the opposition, and this comes down to, again, bringing back up the media, bringing back up the Democratic Party elite, what they want to believe to be true. And this is why I say it might not actually be on purpose. They might just be delusional. They might not be lying. They might just be crazy. Sorry, that's ableist language. That's my. They might not be. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. They might not be lying. They might just be crazy. And because, again, they live in this bubble where they're able to convince themselves that they're so inclusive, and everyone outside this bubble is just a white male who's racist and sexist. And unfortunately, we could talk. I've been monologuing, so someone else can.
I was just thinking of an example that came out recently. I don't know if it was today, but from Amani Gandhi, basically, where she was like, some of the things I'm worried about, capitalism and, women's rights, but not something like Wall Street. That's such a white guy thing. Being conservative on Wall Street is a white guy thing. It's I'm sick of this. I talk white. I want to get educated, so I'm trying to go do my homework, so I'm acting white, or all these things of my whole life of being now when I'm mad at Wall Street, I'm acting white. That being mad at Wall Street is a white thing now. I can't do that as a black man.
Let me provide for you. Let me be honest with you, fam. Half of these Negro liberals out there, they don't even like black people like that. your Joanne Reeds, your Smooth Cobras, your Jamel Bouies. Like these people, they're not hanging out with black people. Like not, and I hate to be like real black, but they're not hanging out in the hood. They're not speaking to the plurality of blackness. They don't feel black people like that. They don't hang out on black leftist Twitter. They hang out on black liberal Twitter. Like because that's their echo chamber. Like they hang out in those liberal spaces because those spaces afford them a lot of power. And that's what that's where we get into like just like their goal is simply all inclusive class supremacy. Like that's what their goal is. They have no interest in kind of dissolving the mechanisms that oppress people of color. They just want those mechanisms to be more inclusive.
I just wanted to quickly mention, we got 2 minutes before we're done with our first hour, and then we're starting to reach into bonus time just to give you guys an update of where we're at. But continue.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, like, they just want the slave owners to be black, too.
That's it. I mean, that's literally it. There is no critique on the system, because here's the thing, and this, I want to speak specifically to this idea about being pro-black. Be pro-black if you are not pro-all black people, right? And a lot of these folks, they're not pro-all black people. They're not even pro-all people of color. They're not pro-all any individually oppressed group. They're just pro the people that can fit these very specific ideas of what they believe, what they feel blackness should be. By in return for their status as the token black person in these, I guess you can call them higher ranking or inner circles or whatever you want to use, whatever terminology you want to use for them, they have given their blackness up to be used by others, to be weaponized against other black people. And that in and of itself is an act of white supremacy enacted by wealthy black people. That is, in fact, a direct result of capitalism. That is what all of this comes back to. The root of all of these ills is this capitalist society that we live in that prizes money above all other things. Money becomes your identity. Blackness becomes secondary. Money becomes the primary goal of anybody in this society, because that's the only way we've been taught that we can move forward. And if you don't have it, you're suddenly not worthy. You are suddenly a stereotype. You're suddenly not as good. And so the best way that they can think of, at least in their minds, because they're like, if we normalize this and we make it, so that way black people can oppress other black people financially, economically, however economic is the correct term to use there. We can make it so other black people can oppress black people economically, women can oppress other women economically, so on and so forth. Then they're happy. There is really there's no true sense of social justice, and there never has been, especially with this Democratic Party shift. The Democrats love to talk about, we're the party that wants to make social justice happen. No, you're not. You're the party that wants to make, as Brandon has said, oppression more inclusive. You want to make that ability to oppress more inclusive.
Yeah.
Intersectional imperialism. That sounds like a good book.
Look at who they're supporting. I mean, look at the woman who they're supporting in Ukraine as this champion of the Ukraine independence and getting back Crimea. She's a Nazi, and she's come out openly and said that she's a Nazi. But now all of a sudden, and it's the same thing. I mean, like, speaking as the one white guy in the room, I have this used against me. I was criticizing Donna Brazil for cheating. For openly cheating. We have the receipts, the emails, and everything else. She cheated, and I was called an openly racist by a liberal pundit who's on XM radio and blocked for saying that she cheated.
Yeah. Because that's it. Weaponized blackness is a thing that a white supremacist, that a white liberal supremacist can use to indemnify themselves in their actions, and Donna Brazil was a great agent for them.
When it does great at shutting down people like John here did, like to just shuts them down, because then it's like, oh well, I'm not, but then they're arguing about whether they're racist or not, and not about whether Donna Brazil cheated, which is what the whole point, which is what they were talking about in the first place.
I literally had to say, like, I marched down the streets of Philadelphia next to Cornell West, and that was like the happiest day of my life. And I got a hug from Nina Turner, like that was awesome. And I'm like, sitting there going, why do I even have to say this? Like, I'm making a legit argument about someone who is corrupt. And instead of arguing that on the merits of her corruption, I'm arguing it on the merits of me being white and she being black.
Well, I mean, that's neoliberalism in a nutshell, right? It's basically right-wing corporatist policies, austerity, privatization, selling off public goods and public services and making them private and all other things, masked in socially progressive language. and only language. It's like it's the hyper focusing on, this is a liberal thing too, on misrepresentation within these spheres of power, as opposed to the intrinsic problem with having these spheres exist in the first place. It's the idea, well, hey, the boardroom would be much better if it was full of women and people of color. It's like, well, the boardroom itself is problematic.
Yes.
Wall Street itself is a problematic institution that, the reason we say eat the rich and don't not eat the white rich. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Right.
But yes, the Democratic Party has been the weaponization of people of color, identity has been key to the Democratic Party staking their claim on defining what the left is. Yes. They have been able to define the boundaries of the left so restrictively, because thank you, I have to get it right. So restrictively because any opposition to them can be framed as racist or misogynist or sexist or homophobic because of the theoretical makeup of their party. And
what's
then when
additionally insidious about it, though, is that it feeds directly into what Republicans are saying about Democrats and identity politics and calling everybody racist, even when it feeds right into that. So if anything, you get your moderates people, it shifts yourself right over to, well, there's people on the right, these other crazy people are right about what they're.
Here's the thing. No one can ever accuse me for lying, but the Republicans are right. Some of the Republicans are right about this. The Democratic Party at its highest levels, absolutely weaponized identity in a very, very shallow way to prevent conversations about anything, about anything. And it only hurts. And but the way Republicans frame it, that only hurts us. It only hurts the discourse. Nothing hurts the discourse. Trust me. That only hurts the discourse. But no, that also damages the left. Because the left gets in as because it's an in-group out-group thing. It's like anyone who's not a Democrat is just out of the tribe, and they get homogenized too. But the problem becomes with this, and this is again, I hate to say it as well, but Steve Bannon was right, and just saying that makes me want to vomit in my mouth. But Steve Bannon was right because he critiqued the media for being a liberal bubble, and it is. The media is an upper middle class, largely either white or analogs, it's either white or elite bubble, and they can only ever be counted on to espouse white or elite positions on things.
Well, and if you notice, Joanne Reed basically bit the bullet on feeding the MSNBC, and you see that and as a result, she's been rewarded. She gets she fills in for everybody whenever there's ever an open slot, and she's getting her rewards. Whereas your Melissa Harris Perry's and some of the other black hosts on MSNBC did not buy into that, and they're gone. They got canned.
Exactly, because I mean, if you cannot fit if you don't fit into their narrative for whatever reason, in particular, if you don't fit into the narrative, because then they have to accept and grapple with their actions that partake in this white supremacy. Because the worst thing you can be as a white liberal is racist. And the fact of the matter is, most of the white middle class liberals are incredibly racist. You say and do incredibly racist things. Neoliberalism in and of itself is incredibly racist.
No, wait, hold on. Wait. Because you can't be racist if you define racism as everything but you. You can't be racist if you're able to define racism.
As much as they like to believe they can control what racism is, or the idea or the definition of racism, and maybe in their own little magical fairy world bubble they can, the reality is they are. And black people and Latinx people and Asian people and Native people, we continuously tell y'all, no, what y'all doing is wrong. And you're like, no, it's not. You must be something else. You must be a sellout because my black friend said this. When that black friend didn't have the same black experience, no black experience is the same. But because they grew up wealthy in that bubble, they're like, oh, it has to be like this. The fact of the matter is, the worst thing you can be as a white liberal is racist. That's the worst thing you can call somebody. That's worse than calling someone a Republican. If you say what you did was racist, they flip out because they cannot do it. They cannot recognize their own participation in the system of white supremacy, in the system of capitalism, and how that does nothing but exploit everybody else. And I'm going to say this, and I have vegan friends, but it is particularly true with white liberal vegans.
Okay.
But you will talk to me about eating animals and about being ethical, but there's no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism.
None.
Period.
None. Everything is excluded.
So here's the thing, right? So the issue with I agree with pretty much everything you just said from what I remember it. But the problem, and what I will say is this: my point was that the Democrat, but that's only a hang up of liberals. Like most people don't care so much about being called racist as liberals do, and that's why when they try to weaponize that word, it doesn't really work that way. It's like that, that's an insult in their space because of how much weight it has to them. But outside of that, like the liberal bubble, it's like, oh, you're racist. Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
care.
like being called a racist by a liberal for so many people, it couldn't be more meaningless, or it just means that they made a good point in their mind. That's what they're hearing. I made a good point if a liberal calls me racist.
Exactly.
So like, by weaponizing it, I think you're right that they're not doing themselves any favors, and it's not effective as a tool. Period.
Gets back to them being so out of touch. I mean, that's just one of the methodologies that they use for attack, and they're just out of touch on how effective it is.
They're out of touch. And again, the way they stay out to this is the point Dare made, and this point you made too, and it's a really good point. It's like it's because the people who they platform to tell the black experience are just basically their black friends. And they don't ever look outside of that bubble to say, okay, well, hey, you know what? Maybe we should provide a platform to not only a rich black man or a rich white woman, but how about we provide a platform to like a poor black woman and see what she has to say about oppression in society and whether she had
Nina Turner.
Well, and then the other thing is like they'll give their black friend a platform, but they're only going to keep the black friends that imitate and mirror the types of things that they want to say. They're not going to keep the black friends that's like, you know what you just said and did was racist as hell, right?
No,
those aren't their friends anymore.
Facts. Look at what happened to Nina after DNC. Look at what happened to Nina after DNC. She wouldn't endorse Hillary, and they said, "Nah, you got to go."
No, but see, and that's the thing, right? So if they
tried to pretend like they didn't do that.
You ain't going to toe the line. Go. So, they brought in the a black woman who was the mother of a police officer, who was a black man who was a cop, who was murdered in the line of duty, and used her to basically shame BLM. Yep. They parade the mothers and daughters of people of color who have been slain on the stage like they're props. So here's because it advances their agenda.
So here's
no one in media called that out either.
So here's what I want to say. So like Nina Turner is a great example of this because, and so is Larry Wilkinson, right? Like, was it Wilkinson from the show, The Daily Show, after The Daily Show, the one who got fired because his ratings were too low, but really because he was Williams. Wilmore. Larry Wilmore. Yeah, because he was keeping it real, too real, like realer than know it. Like the problem is, it's like liberals don't want to hear those stories. Liberals don't want to hear the stories about how like their lifestyles are problematic. They don't want to hear that from black people. They don't want to hear that from women. They don't want to hear that from immigrants. They don't want to hear any of that. They will only platform people. This is why I said earlier, like it's both and. It's not either or. It's not they're either doing it unwillingly or they're complicit. It's both. It's like
when you're done, I want to address a comment in chat. But so
So like it's not that the liberals in the media are only doing it complicitly or are only doing it on purpose or are only doing it out of just sheer myopia rather. It's like it's both and. It's a feedback mechanism. They search out people who are telling them stories about the black experience that they want to hear, that critique the system just enough to be what they consider to be on the left, but not enough to implicate them. Right? Like that's what they do. So they platform people who, for lack of a better word, people who represent a drop of oppression and a sea of privilege. They'll platform rich black males, but not poor black women or poor black trans people. They'll platform rich white women who worked on Wall Street. They can tell you how hard it is, to only make $150K a year when their male counterparts are making $160K. And it's like, okay. Like, but they don't understand, and again, it's their fault because they refuse to look outside their bubble. They don't understand that that's just not the totality, or even a decent minority of the experience of black people. And again, this comes down to in-group, out-group. They look at these groups outside of themselves, and they say, "Well, you know what? This guy can speak for all of them." And this is where I was saying about the black liberal class. The problem with that, it comes from, in order to empower themselves, they say, I can speak for all of black people. Because I'm sure we've all seen that on Twitter where someone will say, someone will like pull the race card out and they'll be getting critiques about their use of blackness and their erasure of black, or their erasure of a class analysis, and they'll say, "Hey, don't tell me about that. I'm the black one here, and I speak for blackness." Like, no, you don't. You're just a black person. You speak for your own experiences as a black person. It's just that's all there is to it. But and so I don't feel bad for the black liberal class or the female liberal class, the elite, who have been because they're not innocent in this. They have willingly, yeah, wow, that's the right word. They have on purpose weaponized their own identities within that sphere to gain power, because words like racist and misogynist mean so much to the liberals. And they didn't accidentally get there. They know. Joy Ann Reid knows what it means to play the race card.
Now, I noticed
because that's the only sphere it works in.
There's a critique about all these socialist guys they're all just rich guys anyway, that are trying to be social. That was a weird thread that was coming out, and now it makes more sense that you mentioned it. It's like probably because the people that they're hearing these arguments from are wealthy, because that's the only way that you actually get into a conversation with these people in the first place is be a peer, and to be a peer you have to be making millions of dollars a year. And so
real quick, because I want to get back in this, because I do want to address these comments on Twitter, on YouTube. Before we go any further, there were two comments that were made, and I feel that they kind of tie in and in some ways kind of exacerbate exactly what we're talking about. First one is from Patricia B, who says, all of us on the Bernie train are ostracized, white, POC, and they're not. And then the second one is from Old Maryland, red or yellow, black or white, doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is it does. And what we're saying on the show is that even though, and I'm gonna start with Old Maryland here because you're saying it doesn't matter, the fact of the matter is it does. Our identities do matter in the way that we view the world, the way that the world views us, how we interact with it, and how our policies are shaped, and what our idea of what policies should be. Matter. What you cannot do is you do not get to speak for the entirety of the group as an individual. I don't get to speak for anybody's blackness but my own. I don't get to speak for anybody's experience as an Asian person but my own. I don't get to speak for anybody else's as a mixed person but my own. And that is what we're saying, because you cannot remove race from class, because intersectionality is a thing and it needs to be recognized. Now, moving on to all of us on the Bernie train are the same to them, that's also not true. Because while you on the Bernie train, you might be, this is probably your first time having your identity erased a lot of times if you're a white woman in America. Have you ever experienced having your identity erased by a politically powerful group in the sense that you just no longer exist, whereas people of color have been dealing with this? We are not the same to them.
I mean, that's not fair. White women had their.
Let me finish. It's here. This erasure did happen, but we are not all the same, because the reason why is they can allow. Like Bernie, that was something that the Democratic elites could allow. They could say, well, yeah, women like Bernie, that's fine. They could not allow color to like Bernie, because if that were to go out and snowball, and that idea was to gain traction, then there would have been no way their proper candidate Hillary Clinton could have won the election. The only way they could rectify that, the only way they could say, man, we're losing to a 70-some-odd-year-old socialist Jew, is to say the black people and other people of color that supported Bernie just simply did not exist. There were different strategies and different methods of erasure. Erasure is wrong, period.
They actually tried the same thing with Obama. The Hillary Clinton campaign tried the same thing with Obama. Tried to minimize his black support, his support among black people, and it was only it just kind of erupted. And I mean, there was that comment from Bill Clinton, basically, it's the South and he's black. It's just basically Jesse Jackson kind of thing, I don't remember the phrasing exactly, but this isn't the first time they tried. Yeah, this isn't the first time they tried to minimize the black support for anybody besides them. And that it just didn't happen to work out because he happened to be black, but it happened to work out in the long run for him because he was neoliberal enough that they got whatever they needed to get done. I mean, not as hawkish as Hillary Clinton might have been. But I think that's one thing to say. It was like, or maybe he was too attached to his political legacy or what. But we didn't bomb Syria, or we didn't invade Syria right away. Which is, if Hillary was president, I think we would have.
Well, she wanted to bomb every single airfield, not just one.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and you're not going to do that without troops on the ground. But go ahead.
No. I was going to say the Democratic Party, what they tend to do with women and people of color, at least with the Bernie situation, was either they erase you entirely, a la the Bernie bro narrative, or they or they implied that if you were supporting Bernie or as a person of color or as a woman, and this is also true about the Republican Party. Like, you're not even allowed to choose to be conservative. I'll say a lot about Black conservatives or Black Republicans and female Republicans or even gay Republicans, but it's just like, you're free to support who any, like, there's usually some rationality there for you. Like, it may not make sense to me, but if you're rich, it makes sense to me. But my point was that if you're not a Democrat, if you're a person of color or a woman who does not support the Democratic Party establishment's position, like, you are either entirely erased in their narrative, or you lose all agency. You've been tricked by Bernie. You've been tricked by the Republicans. Ironically, they present it as though you are, you have been hypnotized by the white supremacist movement.
Look what they did to Cornel West. I mean, when Cornel West started coming out against Obama, look at what they did to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
definitely.
That's just an example of somebody who's prominent.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. But I want to switch this topic, and so the reason why I was talking about why I have sympathy for the white working class male is because, like, they have been scapegoated as, the source of all evil in society. And I mean, okay, I can go with you there, but the problem with that, I can walk with you to that pier. Right. The problem is I can't walk to that pier if the person who is making that argument is the Democratic Party. We can talk about like the patriarchy, the hetero you know what? Screw it. We can talk about honkies all day. Like, we can talk about honkies all day, but I don't want to hear that from the Democratic Party establishment. Right, because as neoliberals, they are deeply entrenched in white supremacy, and so they're
perpetuating the systems.
Yeah, they're perpetuating the systems. Like they are perpetuating the system that gave us neo-nationalism, neo-fascism globally. We will touch on that, but I wouldn't say this briefly about. And so, like, yes, I feel perfectly, fine criticizing white males, but not when it's the Democratic Party who's labbing that critique from a political, and so again.
It's also short-sighted. I mean, if you're going to lob that from the Democratic Party with the hypocrisy that's evident, then it's short-sighted. It's
short-sighted, I was going to say from a strategic standpoint politically, but my point, goes back to how I've been kind of back and forth about whether the media and Democrats do this on purpose, or if this is just like a subconscious cognitive dissonance thing, and it's really both. And so, like, they don't only point to the white working class male as strategic foil to them to make themselves more attractive to females, blacks, people, LGBT people. They also do it because this is what they want to believe about their own party, right? Like, that's what they want to believe to be true about themselves. So when people talk about, like, when the Daily Co's Marcos, whatever his name is,
God,
with that dick bag. I mean. Yeah, that dick bag. When you go up there and says, like, "Oh my God, coal miners are going to lose their health care. I hope they like having black lung and dying. They shouldn't have voted for Republicans." It's just like, dude, it's just like not like that kind of homogenizing of the working class as being both white and male does not help anybody. And again, it helps treat any kind of policy that is broad, any broad economic policy, like basic minimum wage, basic universal wage. Universal basic income or minimum wage increase as a white vanity project that would only benefit white males. And it also allows the Democratic Party, as Adair said so eloquently before, to put salve on their own racism, hide their own racism, like in the guise of, well, if I were by making racism not something that you perform or do, but something that you are. It's like you're not like you do racism. You're not a racist.
The basic income thing I thought was just particularly interesting because when Bernie was going around the country during his campaign, you mentioned often the black youth unemployment. It's like if you start paying people just because they're citizens of the country and 50% of black youth are unemployed, that's going to be a huge boon to black youth. That's a lot of money in the pocket of black youth, like just point blank. Like, so to paint it as a white vanity project is just so obscene. It's I can't even believe that.
But you can't tell them that. You can't tell them that the majority of union members are people of color and women. You can't tell them that the majority of people who earn a minimum wage or servers' wage are women or people of color because that's not part of their metric. And so,
that's that gets to all the policies, though. I mean, you look at the education policy. What was Clinton's objection to the Bernie's education policy was that Trump's kids would get to go to college for free too. And so it's not. They don't use it just as race. They use every aspect of creating these micro identities that they then turn into a weaponized thing. So like, okay, we're going to make something universal. We're going to make it apply to everyone. It's going to be egalitarian, and everyone's going to benefit. Well, these people lied as well, so we can't have that.
Well, I mean, that's
bullshit is that?
But that's part of liberal theology, right? Liberals love liberals love that kind of weird technocratic expertise, like lots of math. Now I'm going to sound anti-Semitic. Like liberals,
Listing the shit out of everything.
Hold on, because I want to because if I let Brandon go, we'll be here all night and no one else will get to speak. So I'm going to talk about this right now. Because what we had been talking about before we go forward, Brandon, is about that whole demonization of the white working class. Yes, there are white working class members that are absolutely horrible, and yes, throughout history that has been a large, has been a fair representation of a large portion of them. But let's again dig to the problem, and I think that's the issue that a lot of times liberals conflate. Is they conflate class issues solely as ethnic issues, as race issues, when the fact of the matter is this all, again, stems from capitalism. This stems from times in slavery when poor white folks would just be like, I have no more social standing than these black slaves, and would go and hang out with them. So there had to be a system created in order to keep poor people in line. And so that is one of the major fallacies that liberalism presents today, is that it is more about race than it is about class. Yes, race is an issue. Racists are a problem. Beat every single Nazi you see.
We're not going to get back on this right now. Maybe in a few minutes.
You have to do it on two fronts. You have to act sometimes quite literally fight racists, but you also have to fight the conditions that create racism. You have to fight the conditions that allow for Fox News and the Republicans to propagate racism and to make more and more and more of them. You have to go in and pull the weed up from the roots instead of just mowing the lawn.
Well, that's a very interesting thing you were just saying about Fox News. I mean, let's say that Fox News obviously weaponizes race as well, but they weaponize it from the opposite direction. They're using it to say, like, the immigrants are stealing your job, or black people are getting special treatment that you don't need, like Obama phones and things along those lines. So it's both parties are doing it, but they're just weaponizing it from a different direction.
Well, so here's the thing about that, right? So, both parties have weaponized race. That's absolutely weaponized identity. Like both parties have weaponized identity. Everything including class, right? Everything including class, and this is why I was bringing up the fact that we have to embrace the white working class, not because I care about white people, ha ha ha. Of course, never that, no, never that, but because like they're used as a scapegoat to prevent the Democratic Party from having to engage with its own major flaws internally, its own racism, its own classism, its own all of these things. That's why I said, they're able to present class issues by nature of presenting the white working class as this homogenized thing, both racially and gender wise, as a white vanity project, a male vanity project. You have people like Kamani Gandhi coming out, or Joy and Reed. Doesn't make a difference. Don't care about either of them. Coming on TV, that's rude. Whatever. I know. I meant it. Coming on TV and going, going, hey, I wish that the first thing I thought of, when I woke up was what was Wall Street corruption. It must be nice to be white. I think what do you think of you first? Like, what, you singing Chance the Rapper songs?
Raindrop.
Experience, the first thing you start humming "Who Shot You" by Biggie Smalls. What kind of racist noise is that? What kind of racist? But my point is this: like, but an embrace, but the left, the right has weaponized identity, right? But it's through the weaponization that the left engages in. It's through that sort of erasure of class by nature of neoliberal identity politics that they have empowered the right's weaponization of identity politics. By that I mean this: when you use race and identity to essentially make every conversation against your party's platform, including ones that are It's including arguments that are based in, hey, your party's corporatist, it's classist, it's elitist. You have no interest in taking out Wall Street. You have no interest in giving anyone making healthcare a universal right, not guaranteeing health insurance. Like when you frame all of those things, when you frame any critique of the capitalist system as like inherently racist or an inherently white vanity project, the problem with that is that you empower neo-nationalists, you empower the far right, who has also weaponized identity politics, because what that does is they're able to use identity they are able to identify identity, whether it be immigrants or black people or women, as the cause of the problems that are going unaddressed by your party, right? So what led to the rise of neo-nationalism globally is the liberal takeover of the left, because what that did was it left no viable room on the left for engaging with a class analysis in good faith, engaging with anti-capitalism in good faith, engaging with a more intersectional approach to socialist feminism, black Marxism, any of these things that traditionally exist on the left. They were deemed not valid leftist positions, and so basically
the policies were shut down.
Yeah, the policies were shut down on the basis of they were for whatever reason. So but what that does is that. So basically, the only people who are allowed within the political system at the general level are people like Trump, because if the liberals on the left, the neoliberals on the left, quash any class analysis, quash any capitalist critique from before it even gets into the general population, but internally, and the right does not do that, and their class critique is steeped in racism and neo-nationalism, neo-fascism. Well, here's the thing: they're the only one presenting a critique of the system. And so what liberals basically say is they go, hey, you know what? You can have a critique of the capitalist system, but it's going to be racist. It's going to be racist, and you don't want to be a racist, do you? And some people are going to go like, listen, hey, you know what? If only one party is identifying the problem, either I'm going to vote for that party or I'm not going to vote at all. Because and I think this whole thing boils down perfectly with the discrepancy between the Make America. I always said the Make America Great was the best racist slogan ever. That speaks so. If you've ever been in rural America and Rust Belt America, the idea of nostalgia for those bygone days of manufacturing that are never coming back. Sorry.
Which is exactly why Bill Clinton kicked off his campaign with that slogan. That's exactly why Bill Clinton used that slogan back when he ran.
Make America Great was the perfect slogan. It was stupid because it was harkening back to a past that never existed, a racist past. But you know what? But it was at least saying, hey, I've identified a problem with the system. People are poor. People are struggling. I identified this problem. My solution is that we get rid of the brown people. But whatever. I've identified the problem. The Democrats didn't identify a problem. Their slogan was "Make America Great." America's already great. There is no problem. Everything's just fine. So as stupid and racist as Make America Great was, implicitly racist, at least identified a problem. Make America Great. America's already great. That shit's disrespectful.
America's already great and love Trump's hate. Like those two, just terrible slogans.
Let me tell you something, fam. As someone who grew up poor and someone who's poor now, if you tell me my life is fine and I can look around and my material conditions do not reflect that, that pisses me off.
Right? Right? Look, the hell it is.
In the YouTube that says race and class are two separate issues. They're not. You cannot remove race from class and class from race and gender from class and gender from race. All of these things are intersectional.
Yeah, which is why.
So if you really want to make America great, if you want to go and you want to make America great, let's take care of the problems of the most marginalized members of our society. Let's find that person who hits all of those intersectional marks, and let's sit down with that community and say, what can we do that would make your life better? Because guess what? I guarantee you, if we fix their lives, using that intersectionality, your life will get better because the two are inextricable from each other. Capitalism and racism go hand in hand. Capitalism and sexism go hand in hand, period. You cannot actually extricate the two. It just doesn't work. We have to treat it as a cohesive whole. Otherwise, you're just going to treat a symptom here and a symptom there, and we're never going to go anywhere. Because the fact of the matter is, if the only way to make America great is to make sure that the people that are most marginalized in our society are the best taken care of. because then I guarantee you, when we take care of them, we take care of the rest of us.
I'm pretty sure there was
That's
some
why
guy
blue
that
collar
said something
for
about, you know,
everybody
how we treat the
is a
least
big
of
deal.
those among us, and like I'm pretty sure he was pretty popular. I don't know if any of you guys heard of him or not.
The
You know who I'm talking about.
the thing about it is, it's just like Trump was the candidate of grievance. It's and you can never ever underestimate the power of just recognizing someone's problem. When you can never ever underestimate the value in being the only person in the room who seems to recognize that things are not okay. And that's why I say Democratic Party empowered Trump, because I was having a conversation with a writer from the Chicago Times, Chicago Tribune, at a Jill Stein rally once. And I was just like, Trump, like the Democratic Party, what they did was they made it so, and this is not just with capitalism, this is also with Hillary Clinton's flaws. They made it so the first time a bunch of people were hearing about the problems of our system was through Trump. Like in silencing Bernie, they made it a reality that Trump was the only person in the race who was delivering critiques of capitalism, you know, tangentially, but critiques of the results of capitalism. He wasn't actually making a capitalist critique. He was critiquing the reality we live in, that is essentially a result of capitalism, and think it's actually a result of brown people, which again it's not.
And he was pulling a con job in general, so how much he sincerely believed anything he said is another story.
He was the only person saying these things.
Yep.
Right. And so like that resonated. And I'm not gonna say one quick thing, and I'll let you go forever if you want to. But the problem with that is I'll try. The problem becomes, the issue is like that people are going like, well, Trump isn't going to keep his promises. Like, you know, like, everyone's so upset Trump. Like, yeah, there are the few people who are going to be upset that Trump didn't keep his promises, but there are a few people, and this is the unfortunate reality of our system, who the actual workings of the president don't make a difference. They just wanted to hear what he had. They just wanted to hear it. Like, they just wanted to hear him like say things are not okay. They wanted him to say things are not fine, and that's what Trump did. And honestly, that was worth a lot of people's votes.
Yeah, and before the end of the race, the polls were showing that Trump was more trusted than both the media and Hillary Clinton. More trusted than Hillary Clinton and the media. Like Donald Trump, a serial liar. Even Republicans will admit he's a serial liar.
And he still is now. I mean, the latest Washington Post, I think they put up an article, and what was really hysterical is Politico ran with the headline that majority of Hillary voters would still vote the same way, but meanwhile, the numbers were 85% of the Hillary voters would vote the same way, but 93% of the Trump voters would vote the same way. So if that came to a re-election, Trump would win again today by a larger margin, and he would win the popular vote. So what you're just talking about he was actually addressing the material concerns. My life sucks, and all of a sudden this is the only guy who's talking about it. Yes, he's talking about it and saying that the solution is we're going to kick every Mexican out and build a gigantic wall, which doesn't make much sense to me, but at the same time, he's actually talking about it. So you have these people on that side who, I think Stacey Hopkins said it best, they're not Klan, but they're Klan adjacent, you know? Like, racism was excused for a large portion of the Trump voting population because, I mean, if you look at the Southern Poverty Law Center's data for the beginning of the year, you didn't see a rise in hate crimes. But what you have seen is you've seen hate crimes being paid more attention to. So you have this.
Here's what I want to interject real quick. You have seen a rise in hate crimes. You saw a rise in hate crimes against people that tended to be white. You saw a rise in hate crimes, especially against the Jewish community. And when it happens to people that are at least white passing or that white people care about, then it gets media attention. But we saw there was a black kid who was lynched in Seattle.
Yes.
Yeah. About that.
No, but like the JCC bombing threats that were called in by a 35-year-old who was living in a basement in Jerusalem. So like, right. So what you're seeing a lot more attention paid to that, which is great. And I think that a lot more attention needed to be paid to that before the election. But you haven't seen a large uptick in the number of white supremacists or racists. That group of core Trump voters were still the same.
Just speak a little bit softer because you're causing reverb.
Yeah, or the mic, or like softer, or you might be able to turn your microphone down. One of the others might assist.
Okay.
And just real quick, I want to interject. I am in no way trying to scapegoat the Jewish community. I think what happened is absolutely reprehensible. I'm just trying to point out this kind of hypocrisy in America, right?
Yes.
That was my only goal. So I apologize if that was rude or wrong.
Everyone just keep it cool. Don't get excited. Everything's fine.
So what I'm trying to say is that you're not seeing a large, I don't think anyway, and I think the data will pay this out. You're not seeing a large uptick in more white supremacists. I think what you're seeing is more of the core voters now being, and this is the biggest danger of the Trump presidency that I saw even beforehand. All of these people are becoming, well, my ideas are accepted, so I'm going to come out. It's not a matter of there are more of them. Like his numbers didn't really increase over Romney. It's just Clinton's collapsed because the Democratic Party did not address the material concerns of most Americans, like Brandon was saying about that America is great again. I mean, America is great enough already. That's not true.
Your lives are fine.
Yeah,
I've seen
the whole popular vote thing has a lot to do with California and a lot of fear from the Hispanic community about Donald Trump, and that caused a surge and increase in the Democratic vote out of California, almost 3 million votes more in California than Obama got. So that almost explains a lot of the popular vote issue.
So here's the thing, right? So John makes a good point about the whole they're not clan, they're clan adjacent issue, right? Yes. So and I made the point earlier that when neoliberals left the only critique of capitalism, again, not a real critique, but like a fake critique of capitalism, when they left the only populism in the race as racist populism, they expected people to wholeheartedly turn away from it just because it was racist. Here's the problem with that idea, right? The Democratic Party at its highest levels never made racism a non-starter. They can pretend like misogyny and all these things are purity tests now. Like you can't be Democratic Party if you're not pro-choice. You can't but yes, you can. You've always been able to. Harry Reid,
and that came out, right?
Joe Biden,
Tim Kaine,
Hillary Clinton wanted to do that stuff. I wanted to Bush, right? The only time it becomes a purity test is when there are other factors, and it's being used as an excuse to remove a class analysis from the equation.
Yep.
So the problem with critiquing Trump on the fact that he's a racist, misogynist, sexual predator is that they didn't really have the high ground on those things. So a lot of people, as Adair mentioned at the beginning of the show, recognize that, hey, you know what? The Democratic Party is racist too, and if they're not explicitly racist, they definitely contribute to the racist structures of society. Absolutely, their definition, like I said, they just want politically correct imperialism. They just want they want intersectional colonialism. That the savvier of us recognize the Democratic Party was like they were just pointing their finger at the other hand, going, "You're racist," but like, so are you.
I feel like intersectional colonialism is like a table book in Hillary's house. You know what I mean?
I don't think she wants intersection. And here's the thing, real quick, because I do want to touch on this because we talked a lot about one of the Dems failings. I want to talk about Hillary Clinton style Democrat/feminists, right? Those white women that you see in those pink hats that show up to all the marches that affect their lives and their lives only, but you will never see them in a BLM march. Right. Ever.
Of course not, because
they wouldn't feel safe. They wouldn't feel safe.
What they want.
So here's
exactly. But what they want. I think they are exactly emblematic of the Democratic Party because what these women want. I can't remember what actress it was who said black women need to soldier up behind white women to make sure that 75% pay gap gets closed. They want equal supremacy across genders for white folks. Like that's what the Democratic Party really wants.
No.
The Democratic Party wants equal amounts of supremacy from white men and white women. They don't give a damn about anybody else. They just I want to be able to oppress you, and I want my wife to be able to oppress you safely as well.
So here's the thing, right? And I don't want to get too deep in this, but like white feminism is just all inclusive white supremacy. Rich liberalism is just like, again, intersectional imperialism. That's all it is. And this is why I said what makes the Democratic Party in some ways more dangerous than the Republican Party is that they can pretend it's not that. Because right. By nature of elevating a few key people, or even a lot of key people, they're able to say, no, we're diverse. And the people get, I mean, honestly, and I say it, again, I'm not a black woman, the people who have it the worst are, a lot of ways, are women of color. Especially black women. Non-black women of color get a little bit more, leeway because they're not black. But women of color who are black or native, they get it the hardest because when it comes down to those intersections of identities that are oppressed, like if you want a woman, you get a white woman. If you want a black person, you get a black man. And so you get that misogynoir thing going on where black women's experiences are inherently erased by white women and by men and by black men. And so it's like very rarely will you see in the mainstream media a black woman on a panel with like on like a panel, and so like unless it's like specifically speaking to that. But I was going to say about so the Democratic Party empowered neo-nationalists. Same thing happened all over Europe, and people just thought it wasn't going to happen in America for some reason. It happened all over the world. Neoliberals took over the left all over the world, and it empowered things like austerity empowered neo-nationalists, because again, there's nothing more powerful than saying, hey, I recognize you have a problem. And the unfortunate reality is like, well, that racist has a point. And the Democratic Party, by nature of being a big tit, they just never wanted to say, hey, you know what? Racism is a hard limit. It's a moral red line. You can't be a racist in our party. You can't even have the specter of racism. And that means implicit racism too. It's not just the N-word, because again, the Democratic Party has made racism something that either you are or something that you say. And by say, I mean explicit language. So either you're a white male and therefore you're automatically racist, or you said the N-word and you're racist. Or you live in the South and you're white and you're racist, or or you're basic like that. Like that's their game. It's like they've made racism an intrinsic quality of certain populations. They've made racism biologically essentialist, or even ideologically essentialist. Like not all conservatives are racist. They just believe in policies that hurt black people, usually by nature of capitalism. And so we get to this point now where the Democratic Party's path forward cannot include neoliberalism, because that's a failed ideology. It's like it's not popular, and so it is why I say the good thing about Trump, and I'll say the silver lining is, and this is something that Bernie Sanders says, and that he's energized a large portion of America. But I'm going to be more specific. The good thing about Trump is that he's made the Democratic Party rank and file incredibly critical of the Democratic Party. Like in a way, like maybe not their like your hardcore Dem partisans, but the people who are who were previous from now, like just culturally Dem or regionally Democrat, or like Democrat for some other reasons that were divorced from a cognitive component, i.e., they weren't thinking about what Democrats were doing; they were just projecting. They were just supplanting their egos with Democratic Party because they said, "Oh, Democratic parties are the good guys. They believe in minorities." Now, the Democratic Party is coming under a lot of everyday scrutiny, and what we saw with the confirmations of Trump's cabinet members, a lot of Democrats don't like what a lot of Democratic people. Like now that they're being forced to actually engage with Democratic Party's everyday beliefs are, now they're being forced to engage with neoliberalism. They do not like them. They don't like the Democratic Party a lot. No. That's why it's so unpopular, because a lot of people are watching them now, and it's not because of Comey, and it's not because of Russia, it's not because of propaganda. It's just because neoliberalism is unpopular, and that's the reason why Bernie Sanders is so popular, because socialism, for lack of a better word, democratic socialism, like universal programs, very popular.
Quickly, I just want to point out that all the traditional indicators as far as who should be popular, the Democrats should be more popular than Bernie Sanders right now, because Bernie Sanders is out there taking controversial positions and being out there challenging folks, whereas the Democratic Party are just challenging Trump, who was basically the least liked person in the country as a political figure leading into this. So it's like they should be more popular based off of how politics usually works.
I mean, don't call a centrist a socialist. Don't call it like just. And again, it still completely boggles my mind that a literal centrist is America's idea of socialism.
I don't care what ideology you ascribe to yourself. I think that shit is all meaningless and vapid, to be honest. I think that all takes a backseat to your experiences, which is exactly how we get to where we got with the Democrats and the media. The
problem is, if we don't call a duck, and we let the center become the new left, then that's an issue. That's part of why we're here now. I agree. We let people redefine what the left was.
I agree, but I don't want to take the wrong message away from Bernie Sanders, and that's this: like Bernie Sanders is not unique, and this is what they're saying, and it's a good point. He's not uniquely to the left. He's not unique for the rest of the world. He's unique for America. And this is the problem, right? Where people have said, oh, because they subscribe to like this big man theory of government, that, hyper focusing on one person. They've said, well, Bernie Sanders is this unique person who is really popular because of some kind of intrinsic quality to Bernie Sanders. It's like, no, Bernie Sanders is popular because his rhetoric matches his political actions. Like Bernie Sanders is not popular. Bernie Sanders' policies are popular. He's the only one out there espousing them in the mainstream. It's just like, and the Democratic Party is desperate to paint him as this saboteur, as this Judas, and other vaguely anti-Semitic things.
He's the only one making a materialist critique from the left. The only one.
Yeah. He's the only one delivering a populist economic policy, a critique of capital, a materialist analysis, whatever you want to call it, from the left. And he's doing so in good faith, and his rhetoric matches his actions. Unlike people like Elizabeth Warren, sometimes the guy say it, she's still a Republican on a lot of things. Yes. He's the only one who's doing this, and he's not even great on other stuff.
Right.
It's just the way he's revealing is that the Democratic Party is not losing because their economic leftism is unpopular, which has always been their kind of scapegoat. They've always been saying, well, the reason Bill Clinton had to triangulate is because the way to win the country is in the center. It's to be economically conservative and socially liberal, whatever the fuck that means. It means nothing. Spoiler alert. Oh, I should put whatever. You know how spoilers. It means nothing. It means like, there's no way to be economically conservative and socially liberal. You can be economically conservative and socially conservative, or economically conservative and socially apathetic. Those are your two options. There are another one. The point I was going to make is that they've been like your Nancy Pelosi's, your Steny Hoyers. They go out there and they pretend like, oh well, you know what? I'd support these things if they were popular, but they're not. America doesn't like them. We gotta win. We gotta win those white suburbanites. But Bernie Sanders, the reason they hate him is because he said, like, actually, you know what? All Bernie Sanders has, he's a silly Brooklyn Jewish man who speaks funny and had the humpback, but he wants to give you all money. He wants to make sure you all don't die in the streets.
And there's 30 years of video of him saying the exact same goddamn thing and pushing for the exact same policies.
Yeah. So
forever.
What behooves us is not saying, hey, Bernie is not only saying Bernie's a centrist, but saying Bernie's not even that popular. Bernie's policies are.
Exactly.
Like Hillary Clinton might have lost because of who she is on a personal level, because she is kind of like, brand. But Bernie,
she's to quote Rick and Morty, I'm the devil, but she's literally the devil.
Yes.
I mean, I don't like demonizing people personally.
No. My hatred of the Clintons runs deep to my childhood. They literally destroyed the left from their supposed left position. They got to power because of the DLC, because of what they determined during the Carter years that, hey, we're going to get someone who's going to, exactly like you said, triangulate and pull a socially liberal, fiscally conservative position so that we can take it. I mean, the DLC was funded by the Koch brothers. We're not talking, this is almost like a sleeper cell, but the thing with the Clintons is they firmly believe this. I mean, you look at even Hillary Clinton on LGBTQ issues. When she came out for gay marriage, it was the literal day that gay marriage polled for the first time above 50-something%. It was the most popular day that it had ever had, and that's the day that she announced that she was for gay marriage. Like, the Clintons are just awful.
I mean, their love story does start with them breaking a picket line, so I don't doubt that they sincerely believe this stuff.
I'm not going against an anti-war rally. I'm going against an anti-America rally. And I had protests at an anti-war rally later. When asked about it, she basically said,
reverbing, Lois. Excited.
Too excited. He's so hyped. I feel it.
We're gonna have to work out your mic issue before next time. But I understand.
So here's the thing, right? So I can admit that the Clintons, on a personal level, especially and I say it because it really is Chelsea and Hillary, because Bill has charisma. Yeah, he may be a sexual predator, but he has charisma. I'll give him that. It's by hate.
Here's the thing, Brandon, to that charisma thing. Like the most affection I've ever had for Hillary Clinton was during that 11-hour Benghazi testimony when she was a hard ass. Like, that wasn't charisma. If she had ran that campaign as that hard ass, I might have considered voting for her, just saying, well, you know what? She truly believes these horrible policies, But you know what? She's a hard ass. No, I'm saying I might have considered it. I did not say that I would do it. I just said I might have considered it.
No,
I couldn't even go that far because
that hard ass
super predator. I will never.
But that hard ass
that.
position. That hard ass position.
Brandon does it, but hard ass persona just it harkens me back to welfare reform and mandatory minimums and ramping up the drug war and coming from a city that's poverty that was in the early 90s when they were in the White House. My city of Tacoma was described as war-torn and looking like somewhere out of Eastern Europe, excuse me. Western Europe was shit at the time, but then people were like, yeah, no, like, it is, they're like, it's terrible. It looks like a bombed-out hollow shell of a city. And that's the reality of the Clinton years. Like, I remember people going to jail for possession of weed and just being locked up for years. I mean, there were people that did more time for weed than people who did for murder.
Yeah.
Like,
I have to bring up a quick little factoid on that. Did you guys know that North Korea has less oppressive pot policies than we do? Like, you can freely smoke weed in North Korea, and it's less oppressive there. But also, here's another point: that we spend more on our war on drugs than they do on their entire military budget.
Yep.
So
before we bomb North Korea, I just want everybody to just let that crunch around in your skull for a little bit.
And still, it's universal health care and free K through professional graduate school.
So here was, despite the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, I don't like. So this will be our last topic for tonight because we've been going on for a while now. So I was going to say, from a political standpoint, I don't care if I like you as a person if you are going to get what I want done. Like, right? So if Hillary Clinton had the exact same personality, but was out there espousing like, hey, I'm going to get universal basic income. We're going to have free college tuition. We're going to have, a $25 minimum wage in some places and a $15 limit. We're going to keep up with surplus of labor. It's going to keep up with labor and it's going to keep up with inflation. It's going to do all that stuff. I'm sorry, it's going to keep up productivity, and not only is it's not going to happen in 2024 because a lot of what gets lost in these conversations about the minimum wage raising a lot of times is like these slow increases. Sometimes they need to happen faster.
Yes.
It's like raising the minimum wage from $10 to $15 over the course of 8 years is simply not fast enough for most people, and a lot of people are going to die in that time. And also, the economy can handle a faster raise in the minimum wage. It absolutely can. But my point is going to be this. It's like, yeah, do I find her completely just unappealing personality-wise? Of course, but that's only one of a many confluence of things that make me not want to vote for her. And this is where, people like Nate Silver who come out, or people in general come out and say, oh, well, it was the Comey who cost her the election. Like, no, it was a lot of things that cost her the election. And I feel uncomfortable blaming a law enforcement officer for pointing out the fact that she was actually under investigation and making it known publicly. It was out of the ordinary and a bit weird. It was really weird for him to do that. But like, if
you want to get back to it, I think that goes back to the Lynch meeting on the tarmac. I think that he felt that he had to.
Yeah, I mean, because anyway, the point was this. It's just like there was a lot of factors for why Clinton lost, and the media has only chosen to engage in the ones that absolve them of their sins.
It shouldn't have been close enough for any of those factors to come in. They shouldn't have been doing shady stuff at the DNC, and that would have prevented those leaks from causing any negative damage.
Loretta shouldn't have met with Bill Clinton. Yeah. She should have laughed a little bit better.
Of things that Hillary herself had control over. That if she didn't do those things, then none of these other things would have been anywhere near enough to turn enough votes for her to lose. So
of course, she should have run while under FBI investigation. That's another. Like Benghazi probably also hurt her. But here's the thing: politics is a win or lose game, and if the DNC didn't think she could win, they shouldn't have ran her ass.
Yeah, because that wasn't enough.
You can't treat politics like a team sport only when it benefits you, and then you want to cry foul when you lose.
But the Democratic Party as the producers. I mean, they're making money. They made money all through the Obama years, even though they were losing seats left and right. What the battle right now is that we make money. Our donors and the people who can fund the most are the ones that we run, and the money concern is our primary target that we're trying to hit, and therefore it doesn't matter if we win or lose as long as we're making money.
Well, let me say this.
And
right?
if you
So
want to look
Democratic
into
Party,
like
they
why they attacked Bernie for the supporting that person, I bet you if you look at where the money went in that local race, to which consultants and to which things like that, I bet you look at the Ossoff race, I bet you a lot of the Democratic people that have normally gotten paid are getting paid. And I bet you if you look at that mayoral race, he was using small time local people who aren't part of that Democratic establishment and aren't part of the profiteering machine that profits off of elections.
I want you guys, folks at home, I want you to do me a favor. I want y'all to see if you can find out how much the people in your state party make. Just find out. Just see if you can find out. If you can find out, tell me if you can stick around and support that. That's all I got to say on that. It's a money-making machine. The Democratic Party is a corporation, by corporations, for corporations. People be damned.
So here's what I'm going to say.
I'm so psyched about this lawsuit because I want to see what comes out of discovery.
Oh yeah, Jared Beck. He's like, yeah, but here's the thing, right? So John nailed it on the head, right? So the Democratic Party enriches itself by pretending it's winning and by conditioning its rank and file to accept symbolic, meaningless, shallow victories of representation, or even fights about representation as victories, even as they're losing. And when they do lose, they still position themselves as to be the intellectual superiors of the Republicans. Republicans are the stupid party.
On somebody else.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. So like either they blame it on someone else or they position, well, we may have lost, but we're the smart party. Like that, like that's what the Democrats wanted to believe about themselves, right? This all comes down to like the emotional and psychological component of the Democratic Party. It's like, well, we're the smart party, we're the party of minorities and oppressed people, we're the party of defending the weak and the marginalized. That's who we are. And so Democratic Party, like it's funny because Democratic Party and Republican Party work in tandem. Republican Party, the grift of the Republican Party is that we're losing. We're constantly under threat. We're constantly under siege, even as they control the majority of America. The Democratic Party's grift is we're winning. We're winning the culture war, and therefore society is improving. The society is getting better, even as people are dying earlier, even as hate crimes are on the rise, even as white supremacy is crisis. And that white supremacy is flourishing, even as homelessness is on the rise. The drug war is expanding. Immigration, people are being harassed by ICE. We're the smart party. We have a black president. Don't pay attention. Turn away. Don't ask any questions. Don't do nothing. We're winning. They don't focus on it. Don't focus on it. And so, why I say like Hillary Clinton losing simply meant the Democratic Party has a harder time presenting the air that they're winning. Because now the whole curtain's been pulled off. Everyone's the glamour Obama was the glamour. He was the glamour of the Democratic Party. And with his leaving the office, the game has been revealed that the Democratic Party, as both ideologically, morally, Obama taking $400K from the people he was supposed to be regulating, demonstrates how morally bankrupt he was as well as one of the Democratic Party. But again, he was the perfect representation of them. It reveals that the Democratic Party is a husk. It's not a national.
I want to interrupt you.
It's not a nationally. Yeah,
it's not. Sorry, it's not. No. Just finish your sentence.
No, it's not a nationally viable party, and they've admitted that. They said, we can win coastal cities, we can win white suburbs, we got nothing. We can win all black districts, we got nothing else. So they position so well, hey, we can't win these red districts. Here's the thing. They're gonna have to start winning some red districts.
Exactly, and the thing is that none of this is actually we'll get back to bring it back full circle to the media and how they missed this. None of this is being discussed on the media. Instead, what you're hearing is full-time Russia. You're hearing full-time that it was, the racists that are rising and all of these things, even though, like we talked about earlier, it's a matter of these people are coming out more rather than a rise in actual white supremacists in this country. It's the demographics are in favor of the Democratic Party when you actually look at demographics, like they say, but they're not actually addressing any of their concerns. And they don't have to. And the media is 100% clueless in helping them along and helping the Democrats remain clueless and completely ineffectual.
So this goes.
Well, I was just going to say one of the big problems that you're. Or go ahead, Brandon. Go ahead.
No, you brought us full circle, right? You go first, though.
Yep.
I was just going to say is one of the problems that they've had is hold on, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay. So you go full circle, right? And this goes again back to the hey, are the media knowingly complicit in this? Are they knowingly trying to blame Russia and Comey and I don't know, Bernie Bros and Sash? You know, let me finish, because the answer to the question is yes. Spoiler, like in order because it allows them to continue to enrich themselves and it allows them to avoid blame, or are the people who make up the media, by nature of being liberals, elite liberals, they should be Democrat rank and file, Democrat stands, have they literally just supplanted their ego with the Democratic Party establishment? They've supplanted their ideology with the Democratic Party establishment. They've supplanted themselves with Hillary Clinton, and therefore to critique her, to critique that establishment, to critique that structure would be an attack on their own, view of themselves. And I think it's both. I think it really is a feedback mechanism here, because we have, people are still out here defending Chelsea and Hillary and going, hey, how dare you point out that Chelsea's opinions are kind of bad, or she's kind of, or really she should go away.
This is the same Chelsea Clinton I want to add that I believe campaigned against.
No, sorry. Let me just finish it. Let me finish one statement. Like if it were just strategic to make money or to avoid people stop listening to them because they're wrong and stupid, they wouldn't be taking it so personally. But they take Clinton's loss and the critiques of Chelsea Clinton, Hillary Clinton's loss and critiques of Chelsea so personally that I can only believe it has to. This is actually an issue of. They had elevated the Clinton family to royalty. The Clinton family is royal, along with being the avatars of liberalism and neoliberalism and the Democratic Party, are royalty, and they serve as a stand-in for a lot of your Democrat Party elite urban rank and file. They just see nothing wrong with her, and to critique her, to critique Samantha Bee, who's also fucking awful.
Horrible.
Oh, she is awful, and I would have never thought there was something worse than like Lena Dunham in this. But to critique her, to critique Samantha Bee, to critique Jon Stewart, to critique all these people, these liberal stands, is to attack them at who they are. And so that's why I say the left has to move forward. And I wrote a whole thread on this. Is it okay to hate Hillary Clinton? Absolutely. Like it's perfectly okay to hate Hillary Clinton on a political level, because she is personal level, your mileage may vary. I don't care. Do you, fam. But like on a political level, from the leftist position, if you are really serious about reforming the left, resisting Trump, reforming the Democratic Party, gaining power, Hillary Clinton has to be rebuked. That Clinton brand of politics has got to be exiled from the Democratic Party. There can be no leftist party in America where the de facto heads, because they are still the de facto heads, the Clintons are still running things. Obama world is kind of out, although Tom Perez is there, but the Clintons are still running things. To be gone. They have to be exiled. They can be given no sanctuary in the Democratic Party. I know a lot, like these hagiographies, which is a good word that Sarah Jones, I feel like she introduced to everybody, have to be attacked vehemently, because they show that the media is composed of people who identify too strongly with Hillary Clinton and whose ideology is entirely reactive to what their Democratic Party is doing. They're just not engaging.
But you're just describing Joy Reid, right? You're not describing Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes is the other side of that. Chris Hayes is
the worst.
Well, I know your feelings about Chris Hayes. My point about Chris Hayes is that Chris Hayes wasn't elevated to his position and doesn't internalize what the Clinton mythology is, but at the same time, Chris Hayes is in the position that he's in because he wouldn't rock the boat. He got to that position through the media channels, because you're not promoted in a multinational corporation if you're going to rock the boat. That's how he got there. So yes, Joy Reid has completely internalized the mythology of the Clintons, but that doesn't say Chris Hayes. So I think your answer to yes, it is both is more apt a description of what's going on in the media.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Like the higher ups, like your people who purposely chose to platform Donald Trump over Bernie Sanders. Your active shills. It's they're all completely on it for the dole. But I think your rank and file, your everyday writers, your everyday contributors to New York Times, to HuffPo, the bloggers, they just identify too strongly with the Clintons. They're that's who they are. It's like that's who they are on the inside, and those people, they can't be won over. I feel like those kinds of liberals,
you're never going to win over Paul Krugman.
Or Peter Dow. They're a waste of time. You're never going to win over those people because they're true believers. And what makes them they're true believers, or they like I said, they've supplanted their ego with that person. There are people out there who write for again, HuffPo, Daily Beast, Salon, who like Hillary Clinton. She wasn't the lesser of two evils. She was the good.
Right.
Not because they were trying to engage with cognizance, but because for their sphere of their little horizontal ascriptive life, lifestyle, she was the pinnacle of that. She was everything they wanted to be. Like people like her and Lena Dunham, that's just who they want to be. And so like those people, it's like those elites, they cannot. I kind of give up on those people. It's because because that's who they are.
Yeah, but their arguments are vapid and they're completely they're hypocrites. I mean, so when you try and point that out, though, to like you were saying, like let's say they're fans, because that's exactly what they are. They're fans. You're never going to convert those fans.
They're proselytes.
Yeah,
because it's a cult. It's a religion. Like anytime you have someone who's that bland and you're so fan, it's a religion. And like the only way it can be a religion is because you've said to yourself that this person is who I am, but in a better form. But I guess at the end of the day, so I say, hey, you have to be able to rebuke Hillary Clinton. And when people come out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, well, the only reason you not," and I always know when these people exist when they come out the work, like, "Oh, the only reason you could hate her is because of misogyny." Okay, that tells me everything I need to know about you right there.
Yeah.
That tells me everything I need to know about you right there because you don't know anything about her.
Right, and like what they were saying about the Clintons in the '90s, and like trying to say like, oh, you can't blame Hillary for Bill's policies and Bill's positions and Bill's platforms. It's like, yeah, you can. They sold themselves as a package deal, and she was out there pushing and standing for a lot of these policies that turned out to be horrible for all swaths of people.
And I just John mentioned
if you can't address it.
John, you mentioned earlier about the DNC lawsuit, and as we're over 2 hours now, so for anybody that's stuck with us this long or is just now tuning in, I did want to mention about the DNC lawsuits that they're going to have transcripts coming out on Friday, so you can follow Jared Beck, and there's another Twitter account specifically dedicated towards finding out more information about that. But I just wanted to quickly mention that part of what was said during that court case during the hearing was that the Democratic Party believes that not only is the idea that they're an impartial and fair arbiter of the process, not only is that just political speak covered by the First Amendment, and so that they're not it's not a legally obligated or legally obligating phrase. They also say that being impartial and fair-handed can't be a legally descriptive phrase, and so that's one of the ways that they're arguing to dismiss the case is saying that, well, when you say impartial and fair-handed, nobody really knows what that means. And Jared makes a good point. And this is the interview from the Real Progressives. Makes a great point. It's like that's the federal judge's job is to make impartial and fair-handed decisions based on the law. And so the idea that because it's in the charter that is somehow covered as political speech is just absurd. So watch the Real Progressive interview and stay in tune with that if you guys want to know more. But mainstream media has totally abandoned it. And whether it turns out whether they win the case or not, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But the defenses that the Democratic Party is making lays bare what they think.
Well, the DNC, this actually fits in really well with the whole media, the Democratic Party, and everything we've been talking about. And it's like the difference between perception of what they are versus reality, and how a lot of people felt they were impartial. I'm sorry, Derek. Did you want to say something? Go ahead.
You're muted.
Okay, no. So like the difference between he wouldn't say anything though. Okay, sorry. The difference. Like what people perceive the Democratic Party to be, people perceive the media to be, people perceive Democrats to be, versus what the actual reality is. And the Democratic National Committee, the workings of the media, mainstream media, the corporate media, the old new media, it's like under the heavy scrutiny they're receiving now, it's like people are coming to terms with the fact that they do not represent, the media doesn't represent the rest of the country. The media is out of touch. The Democratic Party is out of touch. They're an incestuous a group of people who are only concerned about money. And John made a good point. Like they talk about no purity test, but the first question they'll ask you if you want to run for a seat for Democratic Party is like, how much money can you raise? It's like that's their purity test. That's how they establish viability. And that's why it really doesn't make any sense to them that Bernie won. It's like that's why people like Bernie and Thompson don't fit into the calculations of the Democratic Party, because they're looking at like, well, they won't take corporate money. It's like, then they're not viable. It's just like it becomes very easy to say, okay, they just want to enrich themselves, but also they're true believers. Like, Nancy Pelosi is a true believer in neoliberalism. We're capitalists. That's just who we are. It's like that's an ideologue. It's like that is a fundamentalist.
And she and Dianne Feinstein have both come out pretty much against single payer.
Yeah, David Wasserman Schultz did as well. She's still not in favor of single payer healthcare.
Yeah. I was just going to say quickly that the in the case they mentioned the lawyer arguing for the Democratic Party basically made the argument that if they decided who won the Democratic primary in a smoke-filled room behind closed doors, that was totally legal, whether regardless of what they say. So in most cases, I know lawyers would be more on point with this, but people make a lot of arguments in the court of law that may make them look bad or may reflect poorly on them, but because it's not criminal or illegal, they still feel comfortable making the argument. The Democratic Party is in a unique situation where there's ramifications for the legal arguments they make. So when they make an argument saying legally we can make a decision in a smoke-filled dark room, that has a political ramification in that that's what we think you guys would do anyway, and now you're telling us that you would fight a case on legal grounds saying that you have the legal right to. So why should we believe the idea that this primary is anything more than a parade to get support for whichever candidate you've chosen, rather than us actually picking
not to put a fine point on it, but one of the things I really hope Jared Beck is doing is bring up the point that not only is the Democratic Party, running primaries under the assumption that they're neutral, but they're running them with public funds.
Yeah.
So they're defrauding the government if they're taking that stand.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
I was going to jump onto that point, the idea that people, when they think about the Democratic Party, they don't realize that they're basically a business. Mm-hmm. It's like they're not a part of the government.
Right, but they do run elections with public funds.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, they definitely use public funds. But I'm saying it's like people think of the Democratic Party and they think, oh, well, obviously this is like a public institution. It's like, it's not. Yeah. It's not. It's like they're not required to do really. Oh, I mean, well, they obviously have been. They require to do some things, but like they're not a public institution the same way the post office is. It's like they are essentially a business, and they're allowed to do certain things as businesses do. But we should probably end it around there. We've been going for a while. I mean, it was fun, obviously. So we
hell yeah.
I had a blast. Yeah, I do gotta run myself as well. But it was down there on the bottom. Just wanted to mention the Patreon. We got a Patreon going now, and I just wanted to mention that I think personally that considering how much we got going in there compared to some of the other progressive outlets, we are overperforming how much we're getting paid for. So I think we have a lot of room to be able to get more money. And so I know a lot of us have been not just doing this for free, but out of the expense of our own pocket and opportunity costs and all those things. So greatly appreciate what money has already flowed in there. It's been amazing. I know we got some money from friends in the Progressive Army as well. So thanks to all the people that are contributing there. And I have to go. So that'll be my last little piece. So.
I just want to say, one of the reasons why I'm available to do this is because 2 weeks ago I lost my job, and I want to say Progressive Army, Benjamin Dixon, and you guys have all been really supportive now with putting me out there, which I didn't want to do beforehand because of my job. So now that I'm free to do it, I appreciate you guys giving me a platform to speak and letting me be a part of the conversation and the discourse. So thank you guys.
We appreciate having you. We just appreciate you coming on. I'm sorry, I'm incredibly exhausted. Thanks, folks, for watching. Sorry I didn't partake in the last little bit. It has been a very long day. 9 a.m. classes, all that other fun stuff. But thank you again for watching. Please check out our Patreon link. If it makes you laugh, and we've got a $1 donation level, hey, make sure a college student doesn't starve, and Brandon won't spend all your money on drugs.
I'll try.
He said he'll try.
Spend all your money. But yeah, if you like the show, feel free to support us. Obviously, we're not going to be monetized for a variety of reasons. You can also check out the podcast version of the song. And I mean, whatever. I'm tired. At this point, I'm tired. It's been like 2.5 hours. I didn't mean to go this long, but we kind of were on a roll.
So, that's great.
No, he's reading.
There's the
text
Patreon
message.
for this panel. I think it's at the bottom of the screen. It's
Expand the
you know,
discourse
go to-
at Patreon.com.
go to my it's at the bottom of the screen, or you can go to my Twitter and check it out. Thank you.
You would have
And,
wanted
oh yeah,
to
I'm
do
sorry.
that.
Yeah, for all of you who are already patrons, thank you.
Thank
We're gonna,
you.
it's gonna be a bit of a transitional period, but I promise I'll get you anything that I promise to get you with relative speed.
We got you.
Thank you.
Relative speed. Have a good night.
Thank you all. And have a great night. And good luck.
Good night.
That was exhausting.
Wait.
Trying to talk over you is exhausting.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is
Yeah,
only
I should-
possible
you
with
should warn you.
listeners.